Canada says it's prepared to strike back after the Trump administration added those 50% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports effective yesterday. Country now considering doubling tariffs against the U.S. Ontario also considering bringing back its own 25% tax on power exports, a measure that you might remember was enacted and then later dropped earlier this year. This all as Canada's trade deficit in April reaches some historic highs as all the uncertainty on trade weighs on the global economy. Joining us this morning is Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Premier, great to have you back. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, Carl.
I want to talk the steel and aluminum, but just because we're coming off of news of this call between Xi and the president, what does Canada think as they're watching that exchange, that attempt at a reset?
Well, what people think here in Canada, that China is getting better treatment than their closest allies and friends. Let's make no mistake about it. As China is undermining our steel and aluminum markets in the U.S. and in Canada, and shipping steel through other countries, slapping, for instance, a Made in Mexico sticker on, shipping it up through the U.S. and Canada, and costing American and Canadian jobs. I think it's a little misguided. We're the number one customer. China's not your number one customer. We buy more products than any other country in the world, and likewise with the U.S. And, this tariff, it's really hurting American people. I call it the $15 billion tax on the backs of Americans, these tariffs that President Trump has put on. We buy $30 billion of steel and aluminum off the U.S., and now we're just going to start onshoring everything from rebar to steel beams to aluminum cans that beverages and beer companies put into it, and they're all coming back, and they're billion-dollar industries, and it's just hurting the people. That's what it comes down to. I have an idea. Why don't we work together and create 250,000 new jobs in the steel and aluminum industry?
Well, what did happen to the fairly constructive conversations that Canada had with the Commerce Secretary here a month or two ago?
It was constructive. He agreed to knock off the 25%. I agreed to knock off the electricity surcharge. Everything was hunky-dory. It was a verbal agreement. And all of a sudden, they came out of the blue and threw another 25%, which is actually hurting the American people. Anything built with steel, it's gone up 16% in the U.S. It's a tax on the American people. I believe in building the AMCAN fortress, American Canadian fortress. And China's the problem, not Canada. China is not a friend of ours, make no mistake about it. They want to undermine America and Canada. They want to cut them off on critical minerals and anything to do with weapons or aerospace or manufacturing. We don't. We have more critical minerals than anyone in the world, and I want to give them to our closest friend and ally. Canadians love Americans. I love Americans. I spent 20 years of my life down there. I love the U.S. It's not about the American people, I can assure you. It's about one person, and that's President Trump.
Premier Ford, you just mentioned the fact that China is undermining steel and aluminum industries in Canada. I mean, part of the argument of this administration here in the U.S. is transshipments, and this idea that China is not just dumping steel and aluminum into the U.S. directly, but into many other markets as well, and then they're crossing the border with those labels, as you just referenced. Is that not happening through Canada?
No, what we've done, I was the first out there saying let's put a 100% tariff on anything coming in from China. I've cut off China to our critical minerals, and I put it in legislation, into law, that they cannot invest in any critical minerals here in Ontario. We want to partner with our closest friend and ally, and that's the U.S. We have every critical mineral that the U.S. needs. We have more critical minerals than anywhere in the world, and we want to share them with our closest ally. Because when all heck breaks loose, and hopefully that will never happen, it's Canada and the U.S. standing shoulder to shoulder, supporting each other. We could be the wealthiest, richest, safest two countries in the world if we focus on a great AMCAN fortress, as I call it, and a great fair trade deal. That's what we need to do.
Prime Minister Mark Carney yesterday said that the U.S. and Canada are engaged in negotiations. He used the word intensive, also warned that if they fail, retaliation is on the table. Are you also engaged in those negotiations? What could we potentially see if this were to swing in a direction that brings the U.S. and Canada closer together?
Well, I think that would be great. We open up the market. We'd be the strongest markets in the world. No one could touch us. We'd create millions of jobs on both sides of the border. That's what we need to do. I hope these negotiations move forward. I'm in constant communication with the Prime Minister as of even yesterday afternoon. And if it doesn't go too well, then we have to start matching tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar. And it does nothing but hurt both countries. And, the administration has to start seeing the forest beyond the trees. We start onshoring $30 billion. That's like closing 6 massive steel companies with 5,000 people each steel company. And I don't want to do that. I want to have open and free trade with our greatest friends and allies. It's a terrible idea what he's doing. It's just going to hurt the American people. And time will tell if it continues. It will hurt the American people when you go after your largest customer.
Meantime, you guys will be hosting G7 pretty soon. King Charles just came, made an important speech in Canada. There's chatter about EU-Canada cooperation on defense. How is all of this moving the needle between Canada and the European Union?
I've been the first out there with a previous prime minister saying we need to spend more in defense. I'm all for the Golden Dome. I think it's very, very important to protect the United States and Canada. That's what we need to do. I'm always pushing, let's spend more, let's partner up, let's buy the jets off the U.S., let's buy our ships, and so on and so forth. That's what we need to do. And hopefully everyone can come to consensus. And let's start moving forward. United we stand, divided we fall.
Although Carney has said spending 75 cents of every dollar on U.S. defense from Canada he says that's wrong. You agree?
Well, again, you can do the calculation any way you want, as long as we get some manufacturing jobs out of that. There's different ways to justify it. I just believe we should put our fair share of spending into defense. It's been ignored under the previous prime minister for a decade. We can't ignore it. And all the premiers are on side, making sure we increase spending on defense and work collaboratively with our friends south of the border there.
Yeah, you're talking about how these dynamics can hurt Americans. Canada's economy has been suffering through this process, or showing signs of it as well. So how do you spur growth in Ontario, in broader Canada, unless you get to a trade deal with the U.S.?
Well, we just start onshoring everything. We start building. Everyone understands this one. Aluminum comes from Quebec. 65% of it gets shipped down to the U.S. And then it gets converted, printed, and shipped back up to Canada or Ontario to fill, the big beverage companies will fill it, and then the big beer companies. That's $1 billion industry. That's going to evaporate in the U.S. now. Our steel beams, rebar, $30 billion. That's gone. It just does not make sense. It's been working well for years. We are not the problem. Other countries might be the problem, but especially China is the problem. But Canada is not the problem. We're your closest friends and allies. This goes back, centuries. And why President Trump is attacking his closest friends is beyond me. It just doesn't make sense whatsoever. Our supply chains are so tied together. You just can't open up an auto plant overnight. And if you take the oil off the balance sheet that the U.S. needs, the 1.3 billion barrels, the U.S. has a $50 billion surplus. Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm good with that. So.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Doug, thanks for the time. Good to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. God bless America and God bless Canada. Let's get this done. Thank you.
When we come back, Palantir CEO Alex Karp's fiery response to reports in the New York Times that the company is surveilling Americans. Here's what he told CNBC next.